was in a coaching call this week, and someone who has had sort of remarkable success in transforming their sex life. I mean, we're talking they'd been sexless for years and had never talked about it, and now is having the best sex of his entire relationship, late in life. And he was talking about the importance of addressing the relationship first. And this is what I want to talk about because an awful lot of people that come into my sex therapy world, that come into my program, are very focused on sex. The higher desire person has been distraught, has been living with less sex than they'd like, less connection with their partner. Their focus tends to be on the frequency of sex. How can we start having sex? How can we have more sex? How can we have better sex? The lower desire person often comes in feeling pressured, feeling broken, feeling like there's all this focus on sex. Isn't there anything but sex? How can I want sex again? And while I understand the focus on sex, I mean, I'm a sex therapist, that's what I'm helping people with. It is worth realizing that we have to back up a step and make sure that the two of you have a true, open, and intimate connection first. Because when couples are struggling with sex, with differences in libido, with stress and tension in their sex life, this typically drives a wedge between the two people. There is like at least a little crack between them, if not an abyss. The topic itself tends to be tense and loaded and heavy. The conversations about it don't go well. They get defensive or accusatory or emotional and escalated, or people avoid them. And so this what starts out as just a difference in libido or an interest in sex can become this very divisive thing in your relationship. And it could mean that the two of you can't talk about this successfully, certainly, but it also could mean that you're feeling less and less connected with your partner in general, that this distress is starting to overshadow other parts of your relationship, that is getting in the way of other things. You might find yourself resentful or feeling guilty or feeling broken or feeling rejected, and it's in the way of your connection with your partner. So, the first thing we have to do is reset this intimacy so that the two of you could have an open, connected, heartfelt, present conversation where you then feel like allies and teammates and even lovers again, even if you're not having sex. That is the first shift that needs to happen. And so that's really been my focus of thought and work lately is how do we reset this intimacy so that then the two of you could address your sex life. This really has to happen first. Taking stock of your relationship, of your level of intimacy and connection, and repairing that first. So, what does this involve? I mean, first, I think we have to start with an understanding of the goal here. The goal is to repair this connection, to feel like allies, to feel connected, to feel close, to feel like you're on the same team. So it takes a focus on positives, on gratitude, on the goal and the vision of what you're trying to achieve. And it's not necessarily about getting back to where we used to be exactly, but you might want it to feel more like it used to, and you're building something new. Then we want to look at how your limiting beliefs are getting in the way, how your brain is making interpretations of things and telling you stories, and how your experience keeps feeding those stories to exacerbate and emphasize this negative experience you've been in. How can we change this so you can see the positives, so that you can change the meaning, so you can give each other the benefit of the doubt, so that there can be some kindness and compassion? Then you really want to dive into masterful communication. There are so many skills that you can learn that can make communication go well, so that the goal is conversations where, what I call real conversations, where you and your partner both feel received, embraced, accepted, and loved. So that these are not divisive, these are not oppositional, these are not accusatory, but where there is true meeting of the minds and hearts in it. These are skills that you can learn. And there's some very powerful ones I teach that allow each of you to feel totally heard and understood and welcomed. So that from there, again, you're on the same page and you're working together against a problem. And one of the other things I emphasize in this process, which I think is really important, is how can you also have fun? When I'm working with people in my course or in my sex therapy practice, yes, we're working on physical intimacy and we're working on communication, but also let's remember to keep it light. Go have fun, go laugh. What kind of dates or outings or activities could you share? What do you have in common? What could be light in addition to the maybe heavier work you're doing to repair things? So there's this whole foundation of emotional closeness and compassion and presence with each other and the ability to have a truly open and heartfelt conversation that could be, maybe it's been a long time since you've had that. Once you have built some of that foundation and you've connected with each other again and you feel like you're actually allies, then we can start to talk about your sex life and start to figure out what has gone wrong and what can you do about it. So first I help people understand what even happens with desire discrepancy. What do these differences mean, and what are the most common ways this shows up in relationships? What are the kinds of traps people fall into about it? What is the meaning they've made about it that's been problematic and is making them feel more and more stuck? And then we talk about the sexual avoidance cycle. This is a term I coined back in 2018 when I wrote my book. The very natural and normal and common phenomenon of starting to avoid sex, avoid talking about sex, avoiding doing anything about it. What drives this cycle and why does that make sense? Then we dive into what the lower desire person is really up against, because I always start with this assumption that the starting point is that a lower desire person has some real legitimate obstacles in their way. What could those obstacles be? What could be going on that's complicating this and makes sense? They're not just broken, they're up against some real stuff. And we need to dive in to the most common ways that higher desire partners actually make the whole situation worse. This is not just on the lower desire person. They often feel like it's their fault and their problem and somehow on them to solve it, but they don't know what to do. The reality is that any relationship, any situation is co created between you and your partner. And the higher desire person understanding the very common ways that they have probably made this whole situation worse and added pressure, added a sense of their partner being broken, has made this cycle worse is crucial. So to take some ownership of those kinds of things, to look back and reflect and think, oh yeah, I did that, and to be able to communicate that to your partner. Then there's preparing for the actual conversation about sex. I've got a lot I teach about getting ready for that conversation and how to frame this in a positive way, in a way where you are teammates, where you're on the same page, where it is you against the problem. And then how do you go have that conversation? How do you structure this so that you can have a different result than usual? So it ends up where you're both actually eager to improve your sex life together, where you both see the potential and the possibility where this could just be an easy, fun part of your life together and no longer this elephant in the room or this source of stress or this negative part when everything else is so great. This is what I'm calling the intimacy reset. It's important to deal with the intimacy and the connection and the communication first to establish that groundwork and then dive into what can be a challenging topic into your sex life. So again, the two of you come out of this like, okay, we're ready to do something about it.